Georgia election officials opened an investigation Monday into Donald Trump's phone call to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, urging him to find enough votes to reverse the outcome of the presidential election in the state. This investigation will review Trump's January 2nd call when he pressured the Secretary of State to overturn the election in the state. So to learn more about this investigation, we're talking to C.K. Hoffler, the president of the National Bar Association. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
All right, so let's get to this. What could happen as a result of this investigation? Should we expect criminal charges?
I think we could expect criminal charges. The District Attorney, Fani Willis, is very, very serious and has launched a broad net into the investigation, not just of the alleged criminal activity of former President Donald Trump, but also some of his surrogates, such as Rudy Giuliani, Lindsey Graham, and others that attempted to tamper with the justified and legitimate results of the elections in Georgia. So we can expect, in my humble impression, that there could be indictments, and because she is launching a very detailed, comprehensive investigation into the allegations.
And just looking at a timeline, how long do you think that this investigation could take?
You know, that's an interesting question. She has hit the ball running. She's a very, very assertive, detailed-oriented, and technically proficient district attorney. She has immediately, and as you will recall, it was the Secretary of State who first mentioned her and mentioned to her that there was this phone call from Donald Trump, and she immediately began her investigation at that time. So she looked into it. She suspected that there may have been criminal activity in her jurisdiction relative to the elections in Georgia. And from there, she began a very, very detailed investigation. She also, I mean, you have to think about this, because the U.S. attorney was not willing to be complicit in indulging these false claims of election fraud. He was removed as U.S. attorney during the Trump administration. So there are a lot of moving parts here in Georgia, and perhaps those moving parts could be tied to what happened on January 6th. So she's got broad authority. She's exercising that authority. I fully expect she's going to leave no stone unturned, and she's going to devote the appropriate resources to get the job done.
And I just want to know, CK, what charges do you think that the president could be facing, the former president, with that phone call?
I think he could be facing charges as broad as racketeering and conspiracy to commit fraud. It was very clear from the phone call what he was trying to do was to pressure an elected official to change the outcome of the Georgia runoff election. Very clear. He said it. He wanted votes to be he needed about 11,000 plus votes. He wanted to change the outcome of the election so that the election would not be certified, so that he had a chance of overturning the presidential election, or at a minimum, impacting what happened in the Senate in Georgia. So he was very, very clear in his intention. So racketeering, and a lot of times when we hear racketeering, we think of mob bosses. We think of, because it's RICO, but certainly the elements of RICO potentially are here in this case, as well as conspiracy to commit fraud. Remember, there were numbers of people. I mentioned Rudy Giuliani, Lindsey Graham. Also, there were calls that were made from his surrogates, and they all had a singular purpose in mind, which was to throw out the election, the Senate, whether it was the Senate runoff election in Georgia or the results of the presidential election. So there wouldn't be certification of the presidential elections. So, we had in November, Lindsey Graham placed a call to the Secretary of State's office. In December, Rudy Giuliani placed a call relative to the results of the Senate runoff election. So in her jurisdiction, Fani Willis, the district attorney, has a lot to investigate. In Georgia, it's legal. It is very legal to record phone calls. So all of this information and evidence that this is just what we know in the public domain. She is delving deeper, and I believe she's going to have sufficient evidence for the indictments. So conspiracy and RICO, and those are very significant charges. And she does know, by the way, how to prosecute those charges. She's a very seasoned, very experienced district attorney. She was assistant district attorney, and so she knows what she's doing. She knows the scope of the allegations potentially she can bring, and she is leaving no stones unturned. So that, to me, is a recipe to get the job done, and if the evidence is there, there will be indictments, in my impression.
And just lastly, CK, do you truly think that President Trump, former President Trump, could really get in trouble for this? Because we've seen him get off the hook multiple times. We just saw it in this last impeachment trial. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think about that quite a bit as we all watch the impeachment trials, but this is different. When you are held accountable in a court of law and judged, presumably by a jury of your peers in a jurisdiction that is not the jurisdiction that you operate in and that you serve in, he's coming into Georgia. And while he does have a lot of supporters in Georgia, he's going to have to face a Fulton County jury if this is a jury trial. And I think it's different. I think it's different. There are criminal charges that will be brought. There could be even civil charges. I'm not certain. But certainly for the criminal charges, he's going to have to answer to a different jury. It's one thing to have a jury composed of senators in an impeachment hearing that are voting to convict or acquit. It's quite another set of circumstances to have to appear in a criminal trial in Georgia, where you're facing a Fulton County jury, or in New York, because Letitia James, as we know, is also the New York Attorney General is also investigating the president for their different types of allegations of financial crimes and the like. But I think it's very, very different when you have to face a jury of your peers. So I predicted that it's going to be a different scenario. Will he ultimately be convicted? That's going to be in the hands of the jury and the evidence that's presented. But I would dare say here in Georgia, our district attorney in Fulton County is not, I would imagine, going to go forward unless she has strong evidence, rock solid evidence, because we know all eyes will be on Georgia yet once again.
CK Hoffler, it's always a pleasure speaking to you this morning, every morning. You always bring such good insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here. Have a good day.
You too. Well, ahead, Georgia's David Perdue is making plans to hit the campaign trail again after his loss to John